capital allowances.
Yes.
So your question was?
My question was, if you bought the commercial property and you were intending to keep them, but now you've changed your mind and you're going to sell the capital allowances, can you still claim them?
Yes, you can claim them, but yeah, that's fine. You can claim them. Yeah. And then when you sell them, the person buying, if they're quite savvy, will ask you about what have you claimed, what haven't you claimed, and then you tell them what you claimed. Whatever's left over, you just pass them over to them. The problem you have, the big problem you have, is for people like Lloyd, is when he starts owning his own units, or anybody else by the way, and you start claiming capital allowances on service accommodation units, and then you've got something called the annual investment allowance, which enables you to claim all of the capital allowances up to a certain value in one go. If you do that, Lloyd, and then you sell off some of the units, then you may have to pay some tax back to HMRC. Okay, so I just want to flag that up in your mind. Okay, don't claim capital allowances too quickly if you're intending to sell your business or part of the business. But the example you've shared, or the question you've asked about commercial property is fine. You can claim the capital allowances and then sell it on to somebody else, and then if they're savvy enough, they'll obviously claim the remaining of whatever you've got.
So they have, there's a residential, so if you turn it from commercial to resi, does it still apply, or is it only for?
No. Yeah. If you convert it from commercial to service accommodation, it applies. Commercial to residential, no capital allowances. Yeah. And HMRC have tightened up on that in the last 18 months.
How far can you stretch it in terms of commercial to SA? Because if you're creating an apartment or 2 or 3, you could quite easily put it on Airbnb through the summer months for 6 months, and then perhaps change your mind. You don't want the hassle, and you need to convert it to single lets. Is that reasonable?
No.
How long would it have to be before?
That's not how it works.
No.
So I'm going to try and work it out for you here, but this one's complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the moment, babe, are you ready for our next exercise? How many service accommodation do you have?
I asked the question because, by the way, I've heard people say do it for a couple of weeks, and I thought, well, that's really
It ain't going to work.
divisive. Yeah.
I'm going to attempt to share this with you, by the way, but this is slightly complicated. So let's say, Oliver, you've got 10 units, okay, and on each unit you've got £50,000 worth of capital allowances, yeah?
Yeah.
Times 10 gives you 500k, yeah?
Yeah.
Now, depending on what type of item it is, you claim capital allowances on it at a different rate. But we're going to keep it really easy in the room here. Okay, we're going to call it plant and machinery, which goes into your general pool, and you claim at 18%. Okay, or up to 18%. You claim 10%, 5%, 7%, but you can't claim more than 18%. Okay, so and we're going to do the math in a moment. But you're aware that you've got something called the annual investment allowance, which at the moment enables you to claim up to £1 million in the tax year. And this is basically from the government to incentivize business owners and entrepreneurs to invest more in their business, because if they invest more in their business, it's likely they're going to grow the business. If they grow the business, they take on more staff members, so unemployment goes down, and they make more profit, therefore they pay more tax. Okay? And I think that ends, and somebody could maybe Google this, I think that ends March 2023, end of March. Then it goes down, Oliver, to 200 grand. Okay? Which is still a big number. So let's say you bought all these units in the current tax year. And at the moment you can claim £1 million in one go. Okay? And you've made on these properties profit of 600 grand. Yeah? If you claim the whole lot, you only pay tax on 100 grand, yeah?
Yeah.
If you claim at 18%, how much is that going to be, Oliver?
18 to 5?
Yeah.
There'll be 90.
If you claim 90 grand, you carry forward 410 grand, yeah?
Yeah.
Then in your second year, you claim 18% of 410 grand, yeah? And then
Yeah.
it's called a reducing balance. So every year you claim 18%, you go up to 18%, you go down, down, down. I think it takes you about 18 or 19 years to clear the whole lot. If, however, after the first year, you sell these units, then because you accelerated your capital allowances, after having sold the units, and we do a calculation and say that the plant and machinery that you sold it for 450 grand. Yes? The cost to you, whether you paid for it or whether it was in the building, was 500 grand. After a year, it's worth 450. Yeah? You sold it for 450. So this is the income from the sale of the business. We then have to work out what the value of your items is for tax purposes. The figure is 0 because you claim the whole lot. Remember here?
Yeah.
You claim the whole lot. So because you've got 450 grand worth of income, you're going to have to pay tax at 19% on the 450 grand.
Ouch.
Yeah? That's called a balancing charge. Now, if you only claimed 90 grand,
Yeah.
and the value of your plant and machine is 410 grand, yeah? Then you only pay tax, okay, at 19% on the 40 grand. That's not too bad. What sometimes happens is you sell it for less than it's worth. So let's say you sold it for 450 and it's worth less in your books, sorry, more in your books, so it's worth 500 grand or whatever, yeah? You've made a loss. Then you get a 19% tax saving on the 50 grand loss, which is called a balancing allowance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to be really careful, Costed. You have to be really careful in terms of how much you claim by way of capital allowances. If you're pretty certain and you're sure and you're confident you're going to keep the business for a number of years, I would say to you, claim the annual investment allowance up front. Because if you don't claim it up front, Oliver, then every other year you can only claim up to 18%. So it's going to take you up to 18 years or however long it takes you to claim the whole lot. So why not claim it up front and get the tax advantage today rather than spreading it over the next 2 decades?
Does it need to stay as a business? It needs to stay as serviced accommodation and not ever revert to...
Yeah, the day you revert, we have this problem here. And it's a massive problem for you. Because when it reverts to buy-to-let, there are no capital allowances. So you're going to have a huge amount of tax to pay, depending on the total value of the capital allowances. So only ever claim 18% in that case to mitigate your exposure, your potential exposure in the future. Does that make sense?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So don't claim the whole lot in year 1.
No, I got that.
Yeah.
But if you're planning, say, you might not plan, things might change, but 3 years down the line, say, to turn these essays into buy-to-let so that you can have a more hands-off lifestyle, you would just claim 18% per
Every year for 3 years, yeah.
And then stop claiming.
Then stop claiming if it becomes a buy-to-let business, yeah.
Right, okay. And then you couldn't ever come back and claim the rest?
You can.
You can.
Yeah.
So you can always revisit that.
You can revisit it.
That's interesting.
Because capital allowances, generally speaking, are fixtures, fittings, plant, machinery, equipment. So in this particular room here,
Yeah.
let's keep it really simple. This screen, capital allowances, okay? The lights, capital allowances. The sound system or the speakers, the aircon units, these lights, chandeliers, okay? Radiators, all that kind of stuff. All
Table,
capital allowances. Sorry?
Table, carpet?
No.
No, because they're
Movable.
movable, yeah.
Has to be fixed. If it's fixed, it qualifies for capital allowances. So even though, so you might stop, but when you come and revisit in 3 years' time or 5 years' time in the future, as long as the items are still in there, you claim capital allowances.
Is there a way to find out if someone's claimed them? Because obviously if you ask them about them, you might prompt them to then bloody claim them and under your own...
Let me be very nice and polite to
Go on.
most people, okay? This is a common question, by the way, everybody asks. And with respect, most people really aren't that smart knowledgeable. Okay? So when you bring it to their attention, they've only got one thing in their mind.
I'm selling.
Selling.
I want to sell that
Nice,
over to
yeah.
them.
Yeah, I want to give myself an
Would you assume at a certain scale, like Holiday Inn will be so big that they'll obviously... No?
Oh yeah,
Even-
Holiday Inn will be so big that they'll be claiming capital allowances, yeah.
Yeah.
But most people that you're buying from, generally speaking, aren't going to be Holiday Inn.
No.
Okay, so even if you bring it to their attention, it's too late. Yeah, I've never ever had somebody pull out of a deal, as in a seller, because of capital allowances.
Okay.
We just done one now, last week. The value of the capital allowance is 750 grand, obviously about 783,000, but 750 grand, significant. And the previous first company had claimed nothing. So they just want to get rid of the property. But it may tempt them, but most people don't want to do it. Because there's other reasons for selling, isn't there? And capital allowances on its own isn't big enough anyhow, so people just take a hit on it. Did you have your hand up?
I did.
John?
Based on what you've said though, if they're selling and then they start claiming capital allowances, they're not going to be able to use much of it because they're selling. And if they took the whole lot in one go, they'd have a balancing charge to come afterwards anyway. So it's not really going to benefit them.
Partly that, but I think Oliver partly might have meant that it might tempt them not to sell.
Oh,
And they might think, why don't I keep this and start claiming capital allowances?
Yeah.
So it could have been either way.
I'll just reiterate a question I heard a lot, which, yeah. So.
Yeah. But people have that fear.
They do, the fear, yeah.
Hardly ever happens. Yeah. And if you really want to be smart about it, is by the time you ask that question, because when your solicitor's doing the commercial property standard inquiry, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks down the road, by that time mentally and emotionally, they've already sold it to you.
Yeah. Don't ask
They'll
them
be
first.
ringing you and Richard and your solicitor and everybody else. When are we going to complete?
Don't ask them the first viewing, that's the question, yeah.
Yeah, don't the first viewing. Yeah. Bring it in later. Okay? Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, by the way, make sure you click like, subscribe and post a comment because that tells me that you're engaging and you're finding the content useful. And if you like this video, make sure you check out this video here because it's the next stage in terms of your learning and development.